there's definitely times where I'll get to a property and people will question if I'm the guy or something, because I'll pull up in my truck and with all my equipment, and they'll be like, "You look really young to be owning a business," and I'll have to explain to them like, "Yes, I am, but I made it work." So yeah.
Welcome everybody to the podcast. Welcome back. Today I have an awesome special guest for you guys. His name is Dylan. He's in the pressure washing industry in the Northwest. So if you want, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name's Dylan. Like you said, I'm from Eugene, Oregon, in the in Lane County District. I'm 18 years old. I started my pressure washing business a couple years ago. I got into the industry because my dad worked for a property management company, and he had a lot of need to clean concrete and clean buildings, and he used to have me go out there and do it for him. And I realized that it was a lot of fun, and I decided to make a business out of it, and I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now.
That's awesome, man. So you got started at 16 years old, huh?
Yep.
What's the experience like starting a business at such a young age?
I mean, it was hard. It was I didn't have a lot of support from my peers. A lot of people say they do when they're younger, but I didn't. I had a lot of support from my parents, but a lot of people thought I was crazy, thought I was dumb, I was wasting a lot of money. I
Mhm.
But I enjoyed it. It was I had a big learning curve because I mean I was even more young and naive than I am now. So I mean I had a lot of learning to do. A lot of I had to I made my own website. There was a lot of things that I had to do to that I wouldn't have had to do if I was an adult, because I didn't have much money. I was a full-time student at a high school, so yeah, there was a lot of smaller aspects that I had to account for, especially when I was starting at such a young age.
Wow, man, that's interesting. So yeah, like starting a business at such a young age, you're actually exposed to so many aspects of business that like did you ever have an experience going up to a customer and did they ever like look at you weird because they didn't think you were old enough to run a business?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, I still get that nowadays, but especially when I was
Oh yeah.
first starting, I remember this one experience I had where I went to go clean this guy's. Uh, I had already quoted it remotely, and I went to go clean this guy's driveway, and I get to the property, and he basically told me to go away because I was so young. And I'm usually pretty good at explaining to them like, yes, I am young, but I'm very experienced. I've done a lot of research. I have a lot of practice, but there's definitely times where I'll get to a property and people will question if I'm the guy or something, because I'll pull up in my truck and with all my equipment, and they'll be like, "You look really young to be owning a business," and I'll have to explain to
Mhm.
them like, "Yes, I am, but I made it work." So yeah, I have definitely had a few experiences where people have looked at me weird or thought differently or didn't trust my business because of how young I
Mm.
was.
Yeah, man, that's probably one of the nuances that you would have to deal with. So you said something about making your own website. So you made your own website?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you do that? Like what were your experience doing that?
I had no experience. I mean, I took a digital art class when I was a freshman in high school, but other than that, I had no idea. I didn't even know how to use a computer. So I must have watched maybe hundreds of hours of YouTube videos. I made it through Wix, and it actually the website I use is still running today, and I still pull business through it. And I had to learn about SEO and target audience and Google Ads, how to make a front page, keywords, stuff like that to promote your business and make it higher up on the Google, how it portrays on Google, or yeah, you know. And so yeah, there was a lot of it was really hard, but I actually enjoyed it. That was probably one of my favorite parts.
Okay. So you're like me then, looking up things on YouTube and like learning that way. What else did you do in business like to get to where you are now? What else did you look up on YouTube to learn?
Pretty much everything, because I mean, I had bought a few courses uh, for a couple $100 to learn about like what type of chemicals to use, what type of equipment I should get, how to use the equipment. But other than that, like the basics, like before I got into the business, I knew what pressure washing was and how it worked, but I didn't know like the logistics and all the little aspects. So I would go on YouTube to, if I had any questions like how to remove an oil stain, or how to brighten up a fence, random things like that, or how to run Facebook ads, how to promote your business using yard signs, how to door to door knock. There was hundreds of different things that I had to learn, and YouTube was definitely a very helpful tool when it came to that.
That's awesome, man. Like there's it nowadays, I feel like this is my personal opinion. I feel like I can get more educated about something on YouTube than I could if I went to school for it, like college and stuff. I've learned
Yeah, yeah.
so much through YouTube, man. What are some of your YouTube channels that you follow or that you look up to that help you learn?
Um, I can't name any off the top of my head, but they're bigger YouTube channels. I think one's called the Lean and Mean Academy.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
basically
Aaron.
they're a large pressure washing company, and he's very good at explaining things. I actually bought his course. It was like I think it was like around $300, and it was a risk for me because at the time I had bought that when I was 16, and $300 to a 16-year-old is a lot of money. So I mean, it was a risk, and it was definitely worth it. It definitely paid off. So
Okay.
yeah, I definitely look up to him.
Yeah, man. I'm actually familiar with him. Aaron's Lean Mean Academy. I think he's in somewhere on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken, like Tennessee or something. He's got a lot of good content, and I've seen his course as well. I haven't actually seen inside of his course. I mean, I've seen him selling his course, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. So,
Yeah.
uh, are you on like the pressure washing social media groups at all?
Uh, yes. I'm in a couple Facebook groups. I used to be in a couple Instagram groups where they kind of it was like an Instagram page and everybody would react with each other, but it ended up being kind of like toxic, and I would ask
Mm.
questions and I would kind of just get bashed because I was young, and people would go on my Facebook
Oh
page, go
man.
to my website, and realize I was young and be like they'd bash me. So, but I found
Oh
that
man.
the Facebook groups are uh, are incredibly helpful, and especially when you have to, because sometimes when you're at a job and you don't have time to like look up on YouTube, be like, how do I do this? You can just real quick snap a picture of what you're doing, being like, does anybody know how to do this? And there'll be tons of comments trying to give you the answer, basically. So yeah,
Dude, you mentioned something, and I'm in a lot of industry Facebook groups. I'm in the pressure washing Facebook group too, and one of the things that I noticed is I've never seen an industry that is so helpful on their industry specific Facebook groups. Like these people have like no ulterior motives. They want to help each other. So I've seen some of the most kind, giving individuals in the pressure washing industry Facebook group. So I think the industry is very lucky to have that type of resource, especially like
yeah, yeah.
nationwide resource. It's incredible. It's an incredible sight for me to go in there and just see people helping each other and being so supportive of each other. I'm sorry to hear that Instagram group was toxic, man. That really sucks.
I mean, it's all right. It was a learning lesson for me.
Hmm.
It helped me understand that not everybody is going to support me, and I have to actually work to if I want people to trust me and go with my brand. People aren't going to just, especially because I'm young, aren't going to just trust me out of the gate. So
Hmm.
it gave me a sense of what I had to do to improve my business and improve myself. If that makes any sense. So
Yeah,
it was definitely a good thing to learn. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. The Facebook groups, especially in the pressure washing and exterior cleaning, fleet washing, stuff like that, are incredibly supportive. And they've I don't know if it's because like there is a lot of a younger audience or experienced people in the pressure washing industry, but they are very supportive, and they're I feel like I don't know how to put it in words, but like say a landscaping industry, they it's a hard industry. It's an industry, but they have Facebook groups, but they aren't really. I guess they aren't really a family, and they aren't really a community as much as like the pressure washing businesses are, because they share everything. Like they don't keep like industry secrets about like how to do it. They like if you ask a question like, "Hey, how do I do this?" They will answer it. They don't care about competitiveness. They don't care about anything. They all they do is care about helping and improving the industry, which is really it was really helpful.
yeah. I think the pressure washing industry is growing faster than any other industry I've seen, which is weird because you'd think that more people would want to get a lawnmower because I guess mowing lawns, not really landscaping, but mowing lawns is easier than cleaning a driveway. So, but actually, people starting up pressure washing groups more. Uh, So you said you started 2 years ago.
Mhm.
In general, or if you want to be detailed as well, you can. Can you kind of share your experience growing from starting out till today? Like, what are the challenges that you faced? What are some like on a timeline? What's the timeline of what happened up till today?
So yeah, so I'd say the first challenges when I started my business was definitely getting the support from others. I knew what I wanted to do. I had worked a couple of jobs because I just turned 16. I was about to turn 17. I worked a couple jobs. I'd worked at a rental business, and I saw how they treated younger employees because they're they don't care about them. They don't have to pay bills, and it makes sense. They don't have to pay bills. They don't have to pay an electric bill. They don't have to pay insurance usually, and so they pay them less. They don't care about them. They're the first to go in case of emergency, if that makes sense. And I saw that, and I did not like it. I felt like I was giving the same amount of work and not getting the same amount of reward. So I'd say once I started my business, getting the support from others was definitely difficult. It wasn't with my family, but people didn't really understand what I was doing, if that makes sense. They thought it was cool, but they didn't think it would ever work out. And that was probably my first challenge. But once they started understanding, and I realized that it doesn't really matter, and it just matters that I have a goal set and I know what I want to do, then that seceded and stopped being a difficulty. And then I'd say the following issues and like the following difficulties I had with the business was I had the first pressure washer I started with was this like 1.5 gallon per minute, 2,500 psi little Honda thing that was maybe 30 years old. It was old,
Wow.
and I couldn't run it for more than 45 minutes without it overheating.
Wow.
And I that was actually my dad's, and I couldn't afford one at the time, and so I spent all my money on marketing, all my money on the Wix website, everything, and I couldn't afford a new pressure washer. And it was perfectly timed because I had just finally got my largest job, which was like I think $1,200, and it was just enough to buy a new machine. And as soon as I finished that job, the pressure washer broke completely. The pump like got destroyed. You should have seen it. I wish I had a picture, but it was destroyed. So I spent all that money on a new pressure washer, and I still have it today. It's a 7 gallon per minute, 4,000 psi machine. And I also then I bought myself a truck. I used to carry all that equipment down around in a Honda Civic. So for people saying like the excuse like, oh, I don't have a way to get the equipment around or anything, it does not matter. Just put it anywhere you can. And then I'd say the next challenge I'd face is once I'd start getting enough business and I was getting a lot of jobs and I was getting a lot of cash flow. I realized that I need to legalize and get insurance because I hadn't yet. Because for me before it was a business, but it was also just kind of like a hobby.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I want to take this to the next level. So I filed for my EIN, my LLC. Um, Here in Oregon, you don't need an actual business, like a specific business license to do pressure washing or to run any business. It's a little weird, but I filed for that things, and then that was all set. It went perfect. It went by fast. And then I went to go set up my bank account for my pressure washing business, and it ended up the Secretary of State here in Oregon messed something up on my information, and usually it isn't a big deal. It takes like 5 hours to fix, and I filed for it to be fixed, not thinking of anything around. I say it was April of that year and the beginning of April, and it didn't end up getting fixed until June.
Oh, wow.
So around almost, I think it was around 2.5 to 3 months actually. So, and I had these checks. I had to pay maybe $2,000 worth of checks and 5 or 6 different checks that I had done from doing pressure washing, and I had to deposit it because it was written out to my business, not my personal account. So I had them sitting on the desk, and at the time, as I was unexperienced and I didn't know checks actually void. So I that was my biggest issue. That was
Oh,
very
man.
aggravating. So I ended up losing about $1,200 off of that because I tried to get in contact with I think three of the people I pressure washed, being like, "Hey, can you send me another check?" And just no response. And I would know what to do now, but I didn't at the time, so I kind of just blew it off. There was nothing I could do. So yeah. Other than that, there wasn't really any huge problems. I mean, there's always the occasional like a hose breaks or a you have to get a new pump. But other than that, oh, one problem I had was when I first started doing roof cleanings, I I extremely miscalculated how much sodium hyperchloride I needed, which is like the cleaning material we use, and I ended up it was about a 2,500 square roof, and I thought I would need only 4 gallons of chemical, And for some reason in my head, I thought that was going to be enough. I mean, 2,500 square foot of roof is a lot of roof, and I had a little 3 gallon pump sprayer, and I thought that would do the trick, and it did not. So I ended up having to spend a lot more money to get an
Mm.
X-Jet and new equipment just so I could finish that roof, and it ended up costing me $1,000 just to get the equipment. And I think I had to fix my pump at that time because I had run the chemical through my pressure washer, and it destroyed my pump because it's bleach
Oh,
basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, those are the main challenge that I faced: is legalization, support from others, and just in general figuring out how to run things. There's a lot of things you have to mess up for you to learn how to do correctly in the long run.
Ah, that's awesome. Those challenges actually, I truly believe, and it sounds like you believe it too. Those challenges actually directly go into helping you overcome the next thing and even build a business. Those challenges are such a foundational part of business that it's a blessing all the time. But that really sucks, man. $1,200. I feel like checks aren't really used as much anymore. So
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a bummer, but again, it was a learning thing that I had to learn because I mean back then it was $1,200, but if I hadn't done that back then, say I did it this year where I got like a $15,000 like apartment job, and I was like didn't know about check exploiting like that
oh
would have
man,
actually been groundbreaking, but I learned it early on, which is a blessing in disguise basically. So yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So so you got an apartment complex job. Was that recent?
I'd say it was about 5 months ago, so kind of recent. Yeah,
Would you
that was one
consider?
of my
Oh, go ahead.
biggest commercial
Hmm.
jobs. That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, nice, man. So, would you consider apartment complexes like commercial or residential?
I would consider them commercial because of how some people consider them residential, but I consider them commercial because of how I get the job. I It's like residential. You talk to the owner of the
Yeah.
house, and it's very like, "Hey, can you come pressure wash my driveway?" And you don't have to go through a bunch of legal stuff. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to send up a bunch of documents with your EINs. You don't have to you usually don't have to get a deposit.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to commercial jobs, even though it is a residential building, it the property manager calls you. They go, "Hey, I'd like to get this done." And it usually with residential jobs, it'll take maybe 3 days to get it scheduled. For bigger commercial jobs like that, it'll take maybe up to a month
Yeah.
just to get all the legal stuff, get the deposit check, things like that. So I definitely consider them commercial.
Okay. And do you do a lot of commercial properties?
Um, I used to do more. I do more during the winter now, but I like to keep it residential just because I'm younger, and it's when people hear about my business and they're like through friends or family or like people I've worked for, they're like, "Oh, he's a young boy doing pressure washing work. Let him come do my driveway." It's not really like 7-Eleven owners that are like, "Oh, let him come do my work." So I don't get that much business doing that, but there's the occasional like, "Hey, can you come wash my store? Can you come wash my sign?" Stuff like that. So I'd say I'm averaging about 80% residential, 20% commercial.
Okay, right on. So, what do you think would be the sources of customers that you get? Like, it sounded like some people give you referrals. How are some other sources?
Well, it's changed over the years of how I've done things. At first, it was Facebook ads and Craigslist. I got a few jobs off
Mm-hmm.
Craigslist, 90% of my jobs off Facebook. But I found that with Facebook, people don't accept your prices because they're not, there's a difference from people looking for the job and just stumbling upon it. Like if they're looking to get pressure washing done, they'll be more acceptable of your price.
Mm-hmm.
But when people are just scrolling on Facebook and they're like, "Oh, look, a pressure washing ad. Let me see how much it costs." And you give a price. They're not as eager to get it done, and they're less likely to go with your price. So I've more focused on Google ads or just my website. My website's bringing in a lot of leads nowadays.
Okay. How long you been working on Google Ads for?
Not that long. I maybe just 8 months now.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, and you bring up a good point because the intention of the person searching is very important. So, like, that's how we learned because we're obviously a marketing company. We do marketing all the time. We do both Google and Facebook ads. And we learned that in order to be successful, we have to understand what the user at that moment is thinking. What is their intention? Like you mentioned, person scrolling through Facebook is not necessarily thinking about your business. And because they're not thinking about your business, they might they'll be like, oh, cool, I might need this or I might not. They either click on it or not. But if you're trying to sell them in the same way that somebody's already looking for it, like they're two completely different beasts. So their mind is in
Yeah.
completely different places. So you have to meet them where they're at in order to convert that sale.
Yeah, I definitely learned that over the years. I have I've learned that like when people message you on Facebook and they're like, "Hey, so how much do you charge?" You have to you have to figure out if they need it or they want it. And I think there's a I think it might be Justin, the Lean and Mean Academy. I think that's his name. Who goes over that. There's a difference from they want the job and they're like, I want this done. Like it'd be nice. It'd make my property look better. It would increase the sales value, how much my property's worth. It would my neighbors would get jealous. There's 100 different reasons, but versus they need it where they're like, okay, it's a safety hazard. There's moss all over the driveway. There's the sidewalks cracking and could give out on someone, and that you have to understand that because that is how you can uh, close more deals basically. Because if you figure out if they need it or they want it, you can adjust your prices a little bit. You can talk to them differently because if they need it, they're more like they're more acceptable again, and they're more likely to go with your prices. If they want it, then they're more likely to say just either blow it off until the future day and go with somebody else because they don't care about it that much. And you really have to work with them and understand your customer. That's what I've found is the most important thing.
Oh, you bring up some interesting points. Because you're basically talking about tactics, basically, like understanding where the person is at. But you like what you're talking about is discernment, understanding whether the customer is actually ready to make the purchase or if they're just like blowing smoke, or I guess kicking tires is what some people call it. So over the years, you've probably gotten better at that skill. How did you find yourself improving over time at figuring out who's serious and who's not?
Um, it's really their language in the chat. Like it the biggest giveaway is whether how they reach out to you. If somebody emails you, usually it's pretty serious because
Mm.
that's usually a commercial job or a residential person that's trying to get it done and they want to reach you the fastest. If they text you, that's probably I wouldn't say the worst, but the least likely to go through because they don't really care that much. They're going to send out a quick text. It's like I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's like when you're like scrolling on Facebook market list or marketplace or like another sales company like that, and you're like looking at random things and you see some cool things and you're like, let me see how much he wants for that, and you press on it and he's like, the guy's like $400, and you're like, okay, cool, good to know, and then you just leave it alone.
Mhm.
That's the basic thing. So I've learned that that when they email you, it's more easier to understand, and when they text you, it's less likely to go through. So my way of, I've learned about that is basically when they send a text, they basically I don't know how to explain it. You kind of have to see it, but they'll basically be like asking questions about things that don't really matter. Like they'll be like um I don't really have an example, but it's pretty obvious when you see it. It's kind of it's kind of like they don't really care. They don't seem very like they don't seem very serious about it. They don't seem like they're actually going to go through with it. Whereas if they are going to go through with it, they seem more eager. They seem more likely to accept your price. It's kind of like body language, but over the phone. Is
Oh,
my best way to describe it.
that's a very good point. So you're actually understanding the psychology behind how they're interacting with you as a business and them as a customer. So you're able to pick up on patterns. Man, that's awesome because I just literally got done making a video about that very same topic.
Yeah.
Uh, so is there a way where for like let's say somebody is exhibiting pattern that they're not going to purchase. Is there a way to win them over to purchasing?
Yes, there is, but it's pretty difficult. Like when you'll tell when somebody's not ready, the number one thing people will say to me is they'll text me and they'll be like, "Okay, I have to talk to my wife," or "Okay, I have to talk to my husband," or "All right, let me talk to somebody and I'll get back to you later." never responds. That's happened. I've been in business for about 2.5 years again, and that's happened to me maybe let's say 100 times. There has never been one single time where I've been able to pull them back and be like, okay, so just let me know, and they've actually came back and talked to me. That's always their excuse,
Okay.
or I'll get back to you later. So yeah,
Man, I did door-to-door marketing. I mean, door-to-door sales once, and they gave us like a list of things to say when we hear that thing, because that's like the number. That's their way of saying no. Psychologically speaking, people just don't want to
yeah,
give you a no. They just want to get you out of their face or get you out of that moment. So they'll like kind of put that fish, I mean that bait to hook you and say,
yeah,
I'll be back later just to get you out of their hair in the short term.
yeah. It's like they're trying not to be disrespectful, but at the same time, it's they don't realize how incredibly obvious it is. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm gonna talk to my husband, or I'll think about it and give you a call back, and then they just never do it. So yeah, you definitely there. Sometimes they'll be like, wow, that price is a little excessive, or I don't know if I'm gonna go with your service. Let me go get a few more quotes, and then that is kind of like the in between where you can't really tell if they're actually going to do it. And the best way I can lure them back or get them back on to understand that they should go with my service is I will give them some time, and maybe 3 or 4 days later I'll reach out and be like, hey, so are you still looking to get pressure washing done? I I'm very interested in doing this work for you. How about I give you a call? And then 90% of the time when they say yes, go ahead and give me a call, and when I can talk to the customer and actually they can hear my voice and they can understand my like what I'm going to be doing and how it's going to be done, I land the deal. Because making a relationship with your customer is one of the most important things, because right out of the bat, if you can make a strong relationship with them and make them trust you, it adds obviously trust. It adds um, they they're more likely to go with you. They see you more as a friend and less like a business partner, basically, in a sense. So it's more like a, okay, this guy's going to do work for me, or it's more like a, oh, he's going to go ahead and do work for me. If that makes any sense.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, they see you more as a companion and less like a business guy.
That's awesome. So you actually mentioned you follow up with them. So if they're in the in between category, you follow up with them. What is your follow up structure, or what is your follow up strategy kind of look like aside from that situation?
Um, it really depends on the situation. Like, if they text me, or if I text them and be like, hey, so still looking to get pressure washing done, and they say, we're still thinking about it, then I'll just leave it alone. They obviously they want to be, they don't want to, like, they don't want to be disrespectful, but at the same time they don't want to ignore me. But if I text them and be like, hey, are you still looking to get pressure washing done, and they'll be like, I'm kind of on the edge, I'll be like, how about this? I'll come up to the property. I'll take a look at it. We can talk about it some more. I can give you a more accurate quote, and then usually when I come out to the property and I get to meet them face to face, and we make some laughs, I make some jokes. It adds, again, it's like that trust level, and it shows them that I really do care about the work, and that they should get it done, because the I feel like I'd say 50% of the time, what the customers are scared of is the initiative of getting it done, because they don't want to spend the money. It's not like something. It's not like buying food. They don't need to get it pressure washed most of the time, but you have to convince them that they should, basically. So my biggest strategy is just to try to convince them that they should, and to build a relationship.
Man, that's cool because you're not the first person that I've talked to in the industry that has said that. Like building a relationship with the customer, especially on like higher ticket items like 500 plus, sometimes even a couple thousand, like they have to have that level of trust that they can trust you with their money, that their hard-earned money. So it's interesting that you say that. I think it's a good nugget to take home, like build that relationship with the customer. But have you had any success with purely text or email based interactions? Have you ever made any sales that way?
Purely like just communicating through that.
Yeah, like they fill
Yeah.
out a form on your website and you land a
Oh yeah,
job.
tons. I don't like to work through email, just because I mean, I'm a newer generation, and email
Hmm.
is kind of like an old thing in my opinion. But there's definitely been a few cases where they've emailed me, and I have a form on my website that they just fill out for a quote, and it goes to my email, and then I'll just reply to the email and be like, hey, this is your quote, or this is your estimate. This is when I can do it. How does that work for you? And they've just been like, okay. And um, the, that is usually rare. I see a lot of cases where, especially with email, where I'll send it out and it'll be through like a business email or a personal email or like a junk email where they just won't ever respond. So that's why I don't like doing it. But yeah, there's definitely been a few cases with that, and there's definitely been a lot of cases with just through Facebook. Like I didn't get any of their personal information. Like especially when I first started out, I didn't take the time to like get their email, send them any receipts. So I didn't really care about any of that stuff because again, it was kind of like a hobby. So they messaged me on Facebook. I gave them a price, scheduled a time, and then I would go out and do it. So yeah, there's been a few cases like that.
Okay. And when it comes to like making yourself more professional, because you used to be a hobby and then you started doing it full time, and this is like your profession now. This is what you do. How would you say you have professionalized yourself from back then till now? What are the steps
Uh,
you've taken?
well, a lot of research on taxes, that's for sure. Uh, Obviously, business license, or not a business license, business registries, my LLC, getting all the legal stuff, getting a bank account, getting savings, a checkings for my bank, an advertisement. But the main thing I'd say is doing things like making a customer contract, so I'm not liable for things, getting insurance, sending receipts after a job, taking before pictures of a job in case of liability. Things like little things like that that are very important, especially if you're not trying to get sued or you don't want to be liable for the property and you want to do a good job. Another thing is when I first started out, I didn't understand much about chemicals or sodium hypochlorite, and I would just pressure wash the driveway or whatever I was washing, and I would leave. I do pre-treating, which is I spray chemical, let it dwell for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I rinse it off, pressure wash it, and then do post-treat it so it gets rid of everything. It doesn't leave streaks. So yeah, that's I'd say those are the biggest things I've done to make my business more professional and stand out.
Okay. Awesome. So like let's say are you one man show right now?
Yeah.
Okay. What are some things that you think that you would like as far as your plan, do you ever see yourself hiring somebody?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I want to continue doing this for my entire life because I am going to college at the beginning of next year. So I I'm not sure if I'm definitely going to continue it through college because it's a good way to make income. But I'm not sure if I want to go to the level where I want to hire somebody because that seems like another stress on my life. That
Mm.
because I know having employees is a big is a lot of liability and you have to pay them and it's not always worth it, especially if you're not bringing in enough income. So I'm not sure if my business grows to the level where I can afford getting a an employee. Possibly, I'd I look more to get maybe like a somebody to do marketing for me. So maybe like an office person where they can just sit in the office, do marketing, answer phone calls, things like that, and less of a like a hands-on guy like me where they go out and do work.
You know, hiring employees in business is one of the I mean not just hiring employees, but managing employees is one of the hardest things that anybody will do in business. It's insane because you're dealing with other personalities, you're dealing with different walks of life, different interests, different wants, and even having a job. So it's crazy. So it's a whole different beast on itself. But I mean, obviously, like if when somebody is like trying to get to a certain level, additional help is going to be required, but it obviously depends on what level the person running the business wants to take it to. So, aside from that, do you have any feedback or you share any advice to the next guy who's starting out?
Um, some advice I can give you is just make sure you don't work for scammers, professionalize your business, and work hard. One of the especially when I first started out my business is I saw this. The first time I joined a pressure washing group, I saw this guy say, "Don't let doubt creep in."
Hmm.
And I go by that every time I'm having a hard day or my equipment's just not working right. I'll think to myself and I'll think back to that time that I was working at Chipotle making burritos and I hated it. And I'll just sit there and be like, don't let doubt creep in. It's going to work out. And especially when I was first starting my business, that was one of the biggest things that helped me push through because there was times where I would be like, this is not worth it. I'm not even making any money. But you just keep grinding and keep going and you will make it. It is for sure. If you put in the work, you will get an outcome eventually.
Oh man, that's awesome to hear. So over the course of 2.5 years, what would you say you bring in on average in a month in revenue?
It really depends. April, I did I think $35,000. So it's a smaller business, but it isn't the smallest. But I'd say on on a yearly basis, I bring in around $110,000 a year, and for an 18-year-old, that's pretty good.
Dude, that's
So
insane for an 18-year-old.
yeah, yeah. So so yeah, I'd say, and that's before tax and before
Yeah,
that's after expenses. So I bring in I like to keep at least 65% of pure income to myself, and then the rest goes back in towards the business. Before it was a lot more, but I haven't had as much expenses recently. So I don't know, whatever the math is, 110,000, 65% of that.
yeah,
So
it's like
yeah,
70,000.
yeah. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's going pretty well.
Yeah, man. Almost wondering why you're even going to college. But if you do this for a couple more years, you'll like outpace anyone who goes to college.
No kidding. Yeah, I don't really know either, but I want to study. I want to major in something just in
Yeah.
case. You never
No,
know when
no,
the business goes downhill.
for sure, man. You're at that point. Uh, when I was 18, 19, I really wanted to do stuff for my own, but I made some different life choices that ended up in a different path. But luckily, not just a couple years later, I was able to get involved in this company, and now I run the company. So I've always had the same level of ambition as you. I definitely commend it. But man, at that age, there's going to be a lot of things that you have the ability to take the risks that a lot of other people don't. So that's something that I commend you for being able to put everything on the line because you have very little to lose. So,
Exactly. Yeah. People don't realize how lucky you are to be young.
hmm
Like if I were to start this in a year from now, when I'm gonna have to be paying college tuition and I'm moving into an apartment and I'm gonna have to be paying rent and stuff like that, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I spent every single dime I had in my savings to start the business, and
hmm
I wouldn't have been able to do that. So people, especially the younger audience, if it's not pressure washing, you should get into something before you turn 18. Just anything. If you want to sell lemonade on a lemonade stand, then go and do it because time is running out, and once you turn 18, life is going to get significantly harder.
yeah. Dude, so there you have it, guys. You heard it from Dylan himself, 18-year-old guy. He started a business, been in business for 2.5 years, bringing home $110,000 in the last 365 days. That's awesome, man. So thank you so much for being on this episode. I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of people are watching this and getting a lot of help from it. So thank you guys for watching. And again, thank you for being on here. So aside from that, take care, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Dylan.
Yep.